G'day, welcome back. So time has finally come. We're going to do this wet belt to timing chain conversion on this Ford 1.8 TDCi engine, also known as the KKDA engine code or the Lynx engine. We're doing it for two reasons. One, a belt that runs in oil doesn't sound like a great idea, and two, you can see behind me our oil leak came back with a vengeance. So that's leaking from the crank pulley seal. And if you remember this drive belt we put on about less than 10,000 k's ago, again we've got this edge has been eaten up because it's been covered in oil, it's weakened the belt and it's just destroying it. So we've got to get it sorted, so we're going to get it done. Now I'm not a mechanic, purely a DIY kind of guy, and so far I've already made a start, and so far I've got about 2 or 3 hours into this job. I'm finally at the stage where I can start doing the timing belt. So I'll just run you through quickly exactly what I've had to take off, move, whatever else, and then you can start to decide if it's a job you want to tackle yourself. So we'll start with that. Right, so we start with, we've taken a wheel off, taken the drive belt off, taken the wheel arch liner off, taken the mud flap off that's around there somewhere, put around to the other side of the car. We've got under trays, we've got engine covers, we've got hubcaps, we've got the serpentine belt tensioner, we've got an idler pulley, we've got a starter motor, we've got a boost pipe, we've got the under tray, we've got an alternator. We've got the one-way clutch for the alternator, we've got the diesel filter crash guard. That's that. Come over here, then we've had to take off this wiring harness that goes to all the injectors and sensors and everything on the front of the engine, because we've got to take the valve cover off. Still got the engine mount to come out. That's where the boost hose was, where the gloves are now. Now we come underneath the car. You see, that's where our alternator once was. There's our AC pump. Still got a water pump pulley to come off, still got some other bits to come off. But these bits on this side of the engine have all had to come off because you need to get access to the timing pin cover over here, because you put a timing pin in that locks the crankshaft. You see all the oil everywhere, it's pretty grim out there. So yeah, so this is where we're going to start the video really. We're going to try and make it about the timing chain, not anything else. But yeah, I've got 2 or 3 hours into this already, and so I'm going to have 2 or 3 hours putting it back together at the end, plus however long it takes to do the chain. So chain and a timing belt and a water pump and some seals. So yeah, it's a pretty big job, and we'll see how we go from here. Okay, so all of the information I've used pretty much has been taken from a series of videos done by Howatt. Now we'll link those down below, and they'll probably are flashing on your screen there. He's done a lot of these wet belt to chain conversions. So the focus of this video is really is it a DIY for a home mechanic, and how does this FAI chain conversion kit work out? Is it any good? So first step in the process, we're going to set the engine to top dead center, and then we're going to stick in our locking tools. So let's go from there. Right, to lock the engine at top dead center, we're going to be using 3 tools. The first one is a locking plate, slides into the camshaft. The second is a locking pin that goes in the bolt hole bottom of the crankshaft, locks in, crank can't turn. And the third one that holds it all in place is a flywheel locking tool. So once you've set the cam and crank in place, you can lock it in place with this flywheel locking tool. Right, to set our locking tools, first of all we need to take the valve cover off. There's 3 8mm bolts holding the cover on. I'm reaching for different sockets. There's our valve cover. Our stinky old diesel. Okay, see the cutout on the camshaft there? When we get to top dead centre, our locking plate should slide in there. Right, so we're going to turn the engine over by hand until our slot in the camshaft lines up, and the slot is offset, so it only lines up one way around, so you shouldn't be able to mess it up. We're going to stop short just before we get to that point so we can put our lower locking pin in. Right, so I've just had to take out, there's another big metal plate at the back end of the head, just had to move that away so we can get the locking bar in. Coming up to top dead centre, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go down and put the crankshaft locking pin in. I can't show you where that is. I'll see once I get the pin in, see if you'll be able to see where it is, but it's somewhere just below the high pressure fuel pump. Look at Alan's videos, it shows you on a bare engine, but yeah, it's a big bracket in the way. It's hard to get to, hard to see and hard to film, but you can feel it and get to it. So I'll put the pin in, we'll roll it to top dead centre, put our top locking plate in. Right, so our bottom locking pin's in. We'll turn the engine, until we butt up against that, we should be able to put our plate in. Okay, so that's up against our plate. You heard that there, hopefully. Now if we find the plate I keep losing, and this plate should then slide nicely should slide nicely right in there, but it's kind of ever so slightly up. So make sure we are. So it looks like our timing is ever so slightly out to begin with. Just by a fraction. That's okay, because we can fix that, hopefully. So we're close with no cigar. I'm sure that plate will go in if we just... Alright, let me get something a little bit flat. So we'll fit a spanner in that gap there for the moment. I might just have to do until we I'll leave that wedged in there for the moment. 12mm Stanley spanner fits in nicely, and we'll just give that a wee. We'll sort that out once we get everything to pieces. Right, so our flywheel locking plate's in place, and up there somewhere that you can't really see up above the compressor, AC compressor, the locking pin is also in place. When there's somewhere you can just about see the, no, you can't. You can just about feel the nub of it with your hand once you get up there, but it's not a lot of room. So next off, we've got to start taking more bits off. Right, next up we'll get this engine man out of the way. I've got a jack on a wooden block underneath this side of the engine, so we're safe to shift that. So we got two 15mm bolts and two 18mm bolts. crack all fall loose. Right, so there's two of these studs with nuts on, and you see this one, the whole stud's wound out. The other one, just the nut came off. And these have got like these e-torque sockets. With an E10 socket undoes the stud. So I might just take the stud out here because it doesn't want to just lift out. Yeah, there's our engine mount. See, with the engine mount out the way, we've got a lot more space. See, here's our timing belt cover. So we've got this part of the engine mount bracket to come off, and you see underneath we've got the water pump pulley that also needs to come off. Around the back here, you might be able to see a bolt head there. That's the tensioner for the wet belt. And I've already cracked that loose, and I have to say that was incredibly tight, and there's not a lot of room to get much in there. So yeah, that took a couple of grunts to get that loose. I don't know if it should be that tight, but she were tight. Right, so I'll go ahead. You don't need to see this. I'll take this timing belt cover off. I'll take these other bits off, and then we'll go from there. Right, so our water pump pulley's off, that engine mount bracket's out. That bracket was a bit of a pain. You've got to jiggle the engine up and down to get the bolts clear of the chassis rail. So now we can actually undo our belt tensioner. Yep, 15. Good and tight. Let's take the whole tensioner off now. There's our tensioner. Before we go any further, we're going to replace our 8mm spanner with a locking tool. Jiggly, pulley that one in. Right, that's fully seated now. So our old belt can come off. Still in pretty good shape. It's not that old. It's a quality solid belt, full genuine part. She's done. Right, next up, we're going to take off the crank pulley. Should be a 13mm bolt. Again, we made sure we're fully locked there. There we go. Loosen it off a wee bit, and we're going to get the pulley off. Now the pulley's on a taper, so just loosen the bolt a wee bit. And now Alan says use a block of wood and give it a bash to unseat it from the taper, so we'll do that. There we go, pulley's off. He's a smart man, that Alan. So it just sits on a taper. So you've got to put all your faith in that, holding on your cam belt on. Well, it's not like a high compression diesel or anything. Well, next up is the high pressure, well, the fuel pump sprocket. They look like 10 mils. They are 10 mils. Quite tight 10 mils. We'll give them that. They were a wee bit tight. Right, 3 bolts done. Now we just need to carefully pry this sprocket off. There we go. Leave it stuck on there. Got a little socket, sprocket. You see it's got a few dabs of sealant on there. You see the bolt pattern, that only goes on one way. Right, next we've got this oil seal, this pump oil seal, which has got a series of, looks like 8mm bolts around there. 8 or 10mm bolts. So we'll get them undone and I'll pop that seal off. So that's 2, 4, 6, 7 nuts, and then that seal comes off. I'll zoom you out a wee bit. So that seal then comes off. Don't want it to kick the camera too much. Yep, seal comes off, and then this back plate's just got one 8mm looking bolt. And so that back plate comes off. Stick that in our pile of many pieces. Well, next up is the pump nut. That's supposed to be reasonably tight. Alan says you should pop a couple of bolts in there and use a pry bar on it to hold it still. So we should probably follow his advice. So we've got a couple of nut bolts in there, counter holding it with the pry bar. Crack it loose. Was a little bit tight, not too bad. Let's finish getting that nut out. That was a 21mm. Yeah, big old nut. She's a wee bit tight, but it's coming. And of course that should have been a lot easier with air tools. Fudge. The whole family's in bed, so I can't really start them welling on those. There we go. Done. Right, apparently oil should leak out of here. Who needs to go to the gym? There we go, there's our crank pulley. Bits of seal. See, that seal's toast. Crumbly bits of seal are coming out, that's why we got an oil leak. Well, next up we can take out our lower belt tensioner. As I said, I've already cracked this loose. It was stupidly tight. You should just be able to wind it out by hand. Can't really see much apart from my hand, but there you go, there's our belt tensioner. You see it's got a flat end, which suggests we've got a belt rather than a chain. So yeah, this is worthwhile maintenance. Alright, next job is the belt or chain case or cover. It needs to come off, so there's a series of nuts around the top. There's some bolts through the bottom. I'm going to take it from the top and the bottom. There's some more bolts all the way around there, so no point showing you that, it's just bolts and you don't want to see it from a crappy angle, so I'll get them all off and I'll see you then. Right, so I've taken out the 500,000 bolts that hold the this timing cover on. Just hold on with one now, so hopefully you can see something for the big reveal. See what's behind here. Of course, I'll try not to drop me timing cover. I've also taken the water pump out, you can probably notice, just easier because to do it before the cover because there's bolts below the water pump. Right, one more there. Got them all. Should have them all. Oh no, there's one more up top. It's 500,001 bolts holding this on. There we go, there's our stinky cover. So yeah, we definitely had a wet belt. See if we can get you in there a wee bit better. There it is, one Ford wet belt. Right, so that's held in by a couple of Torx bits. I think we should be able to lift that off. So again, I can't really keep the camera there because that's kind of where my hands are, so I'll go and take that off and then come back to you. Alright, so there's our new chain, and here's the old wet belt. Oh, fudge. Try not to drop it. Ta-da! if I can pick it up and show you the state of that belt. Right, so here's our belt. So you see all the teeth are intact. It's good. We actually look at the, I don't know how well that's going to show up. Look at the edge of the belt there. It's all cracked. Try and get my ugly mug out of there. So yeah, I'll get you some better shots of that, but yeah, we're definitely doing the right thing in changing this. So this car's got 170,000 kilometres on it, full service history. I've had it for almost 70,000 Ks. Oil's been changed every kind of 8 to 10,000 kilometres with the right Ford spec oil. So yeah, definitely worth changing, because when you see cracks in belts, that can't be a good thing. Right, so you can see I've put the chain cassette in, same place as the belt goes. The one thing to watch is down on this lower pulley. There's a pin on the crankshaft that engages with a hole on that sprocket. You need to make sure that's on nice and tight. It's quite a firm fit, you know when it's going on right. You line it up, push it on, pushes home, you're sorted. This top one just sits on the taper there for the moment. We haven't put the nut in yet. I've cleaned up all our gasket surfaces. Everything was pretty clean, to be honest, but I gave it all a nice wipe. It's all nice and clean. So next we need to prepare our timing cover to go back on. Right, so here's our timing cover. There's the oil pump that lives in this cover here. Plus this seal we need to bash out. So using our special tool, Slazenger 01. Just give that a wee tap out. Or not. The seals come out. So we'll clean up that surface, and then we're just about ready to put that back on. Alright, so there's our timing cover and the gasket all set up, ready to go. They give you a tube of this Durco stuff in the kit, mainly for the pump sprocket. It's supposed to have a bead of silicone on it, but I just put a thin bead around this timing cover because I really don't want to go back in there, and also it's going to help hold that gasket in place whilst I put it where it needs to be. So I'll just let that set up for a minute, and then we'll stick it back on the car. Okay, so remember we've got our oil pump in this timing cover, so we just need to make sure that sprocket's aligned on the lower pulley. So I'll go and try and put this on, and then we'll go from there. It's a wee bit fiddly, but it's on. I just need to put all these bolts in loosely, because then we need to align the cover with a special tool. Alright, so all the bolts are on the cover nice and loosely. Then we need our next special tool. This is the timing cover alignment tool, because this cover is a little bit mobile, and if you don't get the cover lined up, you probably end up with a leaking crank seal. So what we do, this slides into here, And you kind of wind it on in. And that aligns your cover nicely. So just give it a wiggle, make sure it's all set where it needs to be. And we'll just nip up a couple of those bolts and we'll take it back out again. The right size socket. Okay, so I've got a few bolts reasonably tight, well not reasonably tight, a few bolts nipped up so we can go and take our tool out. And just go and drop it in our thing of coolant. At least the lighting there on the thing of coolant. There we go, so if you buy your tools off eBay, it's kind of the quality you can expect. But yeah, our cover's aligned, so we'll go and torque up those nuts and bolts, and we'll never step closer. Right, so I'm back finally after this timing cover issue. If you didn't see it, there's links down the bottom. I broke a bolt, not ideal. Right, next up we need to crack on and finish the lower timing chain part, then we can put the other cam belt on and get it all buttoned back up. So here's our high pressure fuel pump or diesel pump nut. I'm going to put that on loosely, and then we're also going to put our chain tensioner in. So here's our old belt tensioner. You can see it's got a flat bottom. It's a big old conventional tensioner. And here's our chain tensioner version with a domed end. So yeah, that's one way you can tell if you've got a belt or a chain. It's the style of tensioner you've got. So we've got a chain, so we've got this nice new chain tensioner. But yeah, as I say, first of all, put this nut on, then we can wind this in, tighten this up, and go from there. Alright, so we've put our pump nut on loosely. Let's clean up where the tensioner goes. Give it all a good degrease after we finish. Right. Here's our tensioner. Then we tighten. Yeah, nice and tight, like a tiger. Right, then we need to come and tighten up this nut here. 21mm. go, nice and tight. Okay, here's our new crank seal. Goes just around there. And we'll see what we got to try and knock it in nice and straight and flat. I think a 36mm socket seems to line up pretty well. There we go, nice and flush. Feels nice and flat, went in nice and easily. Alright, so next up we've got to get our crank pulley on. Giving it a good clean up. Nice and smooth. No dirt or grime or anything, just got to be very careful to get it lined up nicely so we don't damage our new crank seal. Get our bolt in. Right, so then we need to torque that up. 100 Newton meters plus 180 degrees. I love torquing stuff on this car at the moment. Plus 180 degrees, eh? Bar on because I can't really turn it anything with a torque wrench. Alright, that's as tight as I'm going. It's 100 plus whatever I can get on the bar. It's tight enough for me. Alright, next up we're going to put the water pump in. See our hole there for our phallic shaped water pump. Again, can't really show you it, but I'll stick it on and then show you a nice shiny water pump. Okay, there's our nice new water pump in with a pulley on, some Loctite on those pulley bolts. They're nice and tight, not coming off. Next up we've got this, the inner part of the engine mount. This one here needs to go back on, and then we can put on the back plate and seal and hub pulley and cam pulley and all that kind of stuff. So, alright, here's our engine mount bracket. Next up we got the back plate for the timing chain. Oh, sorry, upper timing belt. Looks a lot like this. Only goes on one way. There we go. So for the moment it's going to be held on by a single bolt. Right, there's that. Right, so here's our oil pump, no, fuel pump oil seal. Okay, that's on. Snug these down. Well, next up is our lower pulley, lower camshaft cam belt pulley. Holes are offset, so don't know if you can see that. Holes are offset, so they only go on one way. Starting. Seem to be. Well, next up we're going to chuck on our cam sprocket loosely, just held on a taper. So our camshaft's still held by the locking bar, setting bar, whatever you want to call it today. There we go, it's on nice and loose. Right, then time for the new cam belt. Tensioner on. Let's put that on loose. Look at our belt. Some direction arrows on here. Right. That's on there. Turn it anti-clockwise until our pointer needs to be in the middle of there, which it is. So that's our tension. It's in the middle of this. That's supposed to be 50 Newton meters, so we can do that one. Right, so yeah, this one goes to 50, check we're in the middle. Do our camshaft sprocket as well to 50. Again our cam sprocket. 50 Newton meters. That tension has moved a wee bit, so we're going to slacken those off and do that again. So yeah, that's the cam belt and cam chain installed. Next we just need to spin it through a couple of revolutions, make sure the locking tools line up, and we'll go from there. So I'll go and grab the tools out, then we can give it a rotate and then see if they go back in. Alright, so the locking tools out, the two timing tools are out. I'm going to spin the engine 720 degrees, pop these back in, make sure we all line up, and we should be good to go. Right, so we're almost 720. Put the locking pin back in, we'll roll it around till it stops and make sure our top plate lines up. Okay. Pins in. Right, that's round on the locking plate. Oh, it's locking pin. And we've got a locking plate. Make sure we're all good. And ta-da! We are. So locking pins in, set plates in. Engine's in time. I'm knackered from turning that over by hand. So there we go. Nice and easy. Check our tension there. Tension's good. We're in the middle of the cutout. So yeah, again, I can't show you too much, but I'll slap it all back together, then we'll give it a start up, and that'll be us done, hopefully. Right, so the time has come. Should be ready to go. So after finishing doing the belt and the chain, I had to put the alternator back on, air conditioning compressor, starter motor, all the wiring loom, a few brackets, the serpentine belt tensioner, idler roller, serpentine belt, valve cover and plenty of other stuff. So it's a fair bit of work there, but now we're ready for the startup. So we know our timing is good. Hopefully there's nothing else wrong. Right, the conclusion. So start off with a beer. Got our EXO VCDS mug. We've got a premium quality Kaiser beer, 5%er German lager. It's $2 worth of beer, so quality job. Wow, this is kind of yellow beer. There we go. Cheers! Not bad. Oh, right. So it's been just about a week since I finished that off. Been driving the car all week. Wanted to get some miles on it before I kind of came up with a conclusion. Car's been running great. Doesn't seem to be leaking any oil anywhere. So we did a good job. So yeah, let's start off with some thank yous. So if you've seen the other videos I'll link below about how I managed to break one of the timing cover bolts, that was really annoying. But my video asking for help, a lot of people came up with some fantastic suggestions on how to get me out of that problem. And the first person to suggest that I drill the bolt out with a left-handed drill bit with a cover in situ was Leon from Bodgett and Leggett Garage. So thanks, Leon. I know he was kind of wanting me to thank him specifically, but yeah, it's kind of that kind of experience that makes my life a lot easier, so thank you for that. I had a lot of great suggestions for help on that video, including Rob from 1.8 Auto, who's going to send me his Mac Tools stud extractors. That's just blows my mind that people are that kind of kind and supportive in our little YouTube community. So thanks to everyone who got involved on that. Much appreciated. Second thank you, Alan Howatt. He's put together the how-to videos of how I actually did this. So I say, my aim for this video is not to be a how-to, it's just how a DIY guy can get the job done, if they can get it done, and clearly I did, so it worked out. So thanks to Alan. Without your videos, it would have taken me 10 times longer. I would have broken more things. And yeah. And the next biggest, well, the biggest thank you goes to Simon at Lymm Engine Components. Got talking to him, it's quite a long time ago now, beginning of the year really. We started talking about this wet belt timing chain setup, and he said, I'll send you a kit, you make a video. So yeah, okay, so the kit turned up, I looked at the job, thought, wow, it's not going to happen very quickly, so sorry it's taken so long, Simon, but we got there. The FAI kit that's sold by Lymm Engine Components does the job, all seems to be of good quality, great quality, everything fits like it should. Yeah, all seems great. My only criticism is that the chain guides and the two pulleys, they all come as in kind of kit form, so you've got to build that up yourself, and it can be a little bit daunting how to do that. It's no big deal, because once you take the old one off, as long as you keep it together, you'll see how it goes back on, so no big deal. But yeah, that's, if I have to criticise the kit, that'll be it. But apart from that, fantastic, fantastic quality. What else do we use? I've got a new timing belt from Mixed Garages, so I always do. But yeah, so Lymm Engine Components in general, they're not paying me to do this, they just sent me the kit, so make a video, and that's the whole brief. So, you know, I have a lot of problems with kind of getting parts, and I've kind of got a very, very small list of trusted suppliers. One of them is Mixed Garage, who I got the timing belt off. I've never had a problem with them. They ship from Ireland, it comes here in 4 or 5 days. It's amazing. It cost me like a third of the cost of buying anything in New Zealand. So yeah, one of the other suppliers that, one, you know who you're talking to, two, they know what they're talking about, and three, they're open, honest, tell you what's going on, send you the right parts first time. They're great to deal with. Lymm Engine Components. He helped Simon there. He helped me out on the golf project. He helped me out with this timing belt kit. Fantastic supplier. They do a lot of engine components. Follow them on Instagram. You'll see a lot of their kits they do and a lot of new components they do. They're an engine component supplier, so they do a lot of that kind of stuff. They cover a lot of the common failures, Land Rover bits and Vauxhall bits and all those kind of stuff. But yeah, I found Simon to be a fantastic person to deal with, and if you need engine components, they ship worldwide, speak to them. So that's our thank yous. So about the job itself, it's a big job. To be honest, it's probably the biggest single job I've done on a vehicle, but saying that, it's a big job that's made up of a lot of small jobs. Every one of them's a little bit fiddly with no access, but it is possible to get it done. Time wise, if you want to do it in a weekend, good luck. It can be done, but it's a lot of work as a DIY guy. If you're lying on the floor 1 minute, up on top the next minute, up and down, round and round, it'll kind of kick your bum a little bit, but you can get there. Plus you need the special tools, you need the locking pin, you need the locking plate. If you read the Haynes manual, you can bodge both of those up. Crank locking tool, Alan doesn't use, I did use. I was much happier using that crank locking tool. You also need a lot of decent tools, so you need something. I needed the E sockets for taking out that engine mount bolt stud. I need my 3-foot bar for actually taking the crank pulley out. I've never really done big jobs on these Fords before, so I found out you need, well, predominantly you use an 8mm or a 10mm spanner socket. So you need a good selection of shallow, deep ratcheting spanners of 8s and 10s for this. And once I'd done, I had no parts left over, so I must have done something right. But yeah, I'm glad I've done this. You saw the state of the belt. It's cracked on the back, it's cracked on between the teeth too, and as I said, this belt's within the service interval. This car's been serviced more often than your average one of these. It's also got the EGR's blanked off, so none of the exhaust gas goes back in the engine oil. So this is kind of best case scenario. and we've still got a really badly cracked belt, so definitely something to get done if you haven't had it done already. Could you replace it with a wet belt? Yeah, I'm sure you could. One thing I have noticed with doing the swap, although it's actually settled down a little bit now, and again it's kind of hard to remember because I haven't driven the car for a few weeks, was I think it is a little bit noisier with the chain over the belt. But again, I've been driving the Mondeo and the Golf. The Mondeo especially has got a lot of soundproofing. The Focus has much less soundproofing, and it always did sound a little bit more agricultural. But possibly it is a little bit louder, but I think after a few hundred miles it seems to have settled down a little bit. So things have bedded in, it's just a bit quieter. So yeah, there we go. I hope that was useful for someone. We try to keep the video under an hour, which I had to cut out a lot of stuff to get it that way. But yeah, it was a big job. On doing that, I found a few problems on the car. I've got a leaking front shock, and I should probably do a valve adjustment at some point. So there's two more jobs, 2 videos that will get sorted at some point. Apart from that, thanks for following this. Thanks for supporting me. We'll see you in the next one. Catch you later. Oh, beer. Hang on. In the final shot of our parts graveyard, these are all the bits that have come off. 2 timing belts, a water pump, pulley, seals, gaskets, tensioners, guides, some empty boxes, all kinds of junk. We got it done.